Hey, y'all. Welcome to the CPA Exam Series of the WERKin Mommas podcast. I'm Nikki. Thank you for tapping in and supporting this podcast and all of my CPA exam content. The WERKin Mommas podcast was originally all about my frolics and frustrations of being a mama to two growing kids. But like most moms out here, there's other hats that I wear. I'm a CPA, I work in corporate America, I run my own businesses. And so I wanted to have conversations about the CPA exam for candidates, talk about business and tax tips for entrepreneurs, share career advice from my perspective as a Black girl working in an industry where I'm part of the 1% and not in a good way. And of course, getting real about money and credit and unlearning some of the things that we as Black kids saw and adopted as the truth. So, my podcast is a labor of love for me. I enjoy sharing CPA exam tips and tricks and all that I went through with the exam in hopes that my experiences will inspire you to keep going, no matter how hard or how impossible this journey seems right now. I'm here to tell you it is so worth all of the stress and frustration that you may be feeling. There's lots more CPA exam coaching, practice exams, simulations, tutorials online at winstoncpagroup.com/CPA exam. There's a virtual classroom where you can access all of my content, my notes, my tutorials, these premium podcast episodes, and more in the virtual classroom. Check it out online. I also post CPA exam tips on LinkedIn, so make sure we're connected over there. And as you listen to this episode, if something resonates with you or is super helpful to you, let your networks know that you're tuned in to this exclusive CPA exam series of the WERKin Mommas podcast. Feel free to share on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and tag me at Nick Winston CPA. So let's jump into this episode. My struggles with the CPA exam manifested into the only Black-owned and woman-owned CPA exam review course designed to prepare candidates for both the CPA exam and their accounting careers once they receive their license. Do you love this content? Well, help create more of it. Support this podcast and the CPA exam virtual classroom at buymeacoffee.com/Nick Winston CPA. When you go to the site, click on the support button, and from there, you can buy as many cups of coffee or tea as you like. And feel free to leave a comment and tell me what you like most about the WERKin Mommas podcast. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/Nick Winston CPA and help create more of the content you love. Spelling for FAR, or FAIR, however you pronounce it, but FAR stands for FAR, Financial Accounting and Reporting. All about the financial statements, the transactions that are recorded to the accounts that are on the financial statements, the relationships between the accounts on the statements, along with the footnotes and the disclosures that tell you what makes up those numbers. That's essentially FAR, the whole exam, in one or two sentences. And it deals a lot with what's being disclosed to investors, to regulators, to third-party users. It goes into how those numbers are calculated, why one method may be selected over another, the primary business of the entity, what is their primary source of revenue, how do they go about generating that revenue, and of course the investor information, the EPS, the earnings per share, and just talking about anything that relates to how things are calculated on the statements. The income statement, also known as the P&L, the profit and loss, statement of operations, the balance sheet, the statement of cash flows, and sometimes there's a separate owner's equity statement. So in trying to learn all of those things, you go through these processes of learning calculations, learning formulas, learning definitions, and you're writing all this down on a piece of paper, or you're trying to figure out how your study materials word these things, or how you need to approach answering the questions. But I took FAR 3 times, and it was the third time where things really stuck. So for me, I had a job for 5 years that was basically FAR content: securitization, issuing debt, bringing off-balance sheet transactions onto the books, dealing with issuing bonds at premiums and discounts, and how to amortize those and set up amortization schedules, going through the month-end close process, recording the journal entries, reconciling the accounts, participating in the financial statement review when we're talking about margins and how one expense is trending up, but it's not because of seasonality, or what's happening with our customers. And it just teaches you how you go from a piece of paper, from a source document, which can be a PO, a sales invoice, and how all of that translates into this grander conversation of, we purchased these materials so we can sell it to a customer because we got an order from a customer, and we're going to mark up the product once we sell it to the customer so we can generate a profit. But we had to pay for office space and pay for phones and office supplies, and we have to pay the vendor, of course. We have to pay our employees and our sales team and their commissions. We have to pay income taxes and utilities and travel. All these things you could think of that had to happen in order for this sale to happen. So what's left after we've done that? Okay, do we have left the profit that we expected to make? If we do, great. What can we do to keep that momentum going, or to do more of that so we can have more profit? Or did we fall short of our expectations? If we did, what happened? Was that a function of not enough revenue, too much cost, or a combination of the two? And so this is where management and the C-suite start to have these conversations. This is how changes happen in the business, where something might go on sale because they just want to move the inventory. Or you might notice that your favorite product is now $5 more expensive because of the demand, and the company knows that they have the leverage to raise the price and generate more profit because people want this particular product or service. Then you start looking at things like, who are the people in our workforce who are critical to making this sale happen? If we need to scale back our expenses, where can we look to cut expenses? This is where layoffs tend to occur. Or if you're looking at, maybe we need to stop producing. Instead of producing 1,000, we just need to produce about 700 or 800 because the way our customers are behaving, they're not really feeling this product this year. So there are so many conversations that happen. There are so many relationships that need to be understood in order for FAR to make sense. And I like to make this part especially real because this involves not only you as a candidate, but this involves you as a consumer of products and services. And when you want to invest in a company or buy a stock, then you have the know-how and you know where to go as far as information and doing your due diligence to figure out if this company is a good investment. So I say all of that to say, I want studying to be real. I want y'all to really get into this content and learn it and master it, because once you pass the exam, that's not the end. That's the beginning. Now you have to start doing all these things. And learning these things is actually pretty cool. And it forces you to think differently about decisions that you make in your personal life. I know for me, I'll go to the grocery store and I'm doing the math in my head like, well, if I buy one, it's $3, but if I buy two, it's only $4. So it makes sense. You know, you start having these different conversations with yourself to really help you understand business and how decisions are made and what really goes on in these closed door boardroom conversations, because if you're a person that aspires to be in that boardroom one day, you need to start exposing yourself to the content of these conversations so that you can be ready. You don't have to wait until you have a senior or a C in front of your title before you start being able to make intelligent decisions and have conversations with your higher ups. I was a senior accountant, and I would sit in on the meetings that the VP would have with his direct reports. And it was because, number one, he made that option available, that if you just want to know what's going on the team, in the department, in the business as a whole, these are great discussions to sit in on. Most of the times I was asking questions because I was curious about things, but the fact that I was there, the fact that I was able to see who the key people were having these conversations, where the information was coming from, and then I can take that back and say, okay, so when we're trying to figure out which campaign is the best one, these are the types of things that I need to look for. This is what I need to be aware of. So you're learning and you're working to pass this exam, but you're also creating a brand for yourself as an expert where you can speak intelligently about things and you know what you're talking about. So that's why I try to tell people it really doesn't benefit you to do what I did and try to pass all 4 sections in 6 months, working a full-time job, running an accounting department with 2 kids and a household and a husband and everything else going on, because I skimmed through and I was able to pass some exams, but I really didn't know anything. And the last thing you want to be is a dumb CPA. There are expert CPAs, and then there are people who have a CPA license because they're good test takers. And I'm saying that based off of experience. So it's one thing to say you're a CPA. It's another thing to actually be able to go out and do CPA things, to be able to represent your client in front of the IRS because you're well versed in the tax code and reg, or if you can file an S1 for a company that's about to file an IPO and go public. Being able to sit in a room at the head of the table as a CFO and talk to your board and your CEO and maybe your direct reports about the company's results and what it means and the decisions that you as the head honcho of finance think need to be made. So yes, it's about passing the exam, but it's also about positioning yourself as an expert in your field. So there really is no need to be hasty with this process and just trying to get to the finish line, because, and this is something I heard AJ Johnson, which we know her by today, but back in the day she was Shireen from House Party. One thing she said is to learn to enjoy the journey instead of trying to rush to the finish line. I don't think those were her words verbatim, but what I took from that was enjoy this space that you're in right now. We all have places we want to get to and we want to be, but there's a lot of progress that you have to make in order to get there. So focus on the progress and that journey and what it takes to get to where you want to be. You'll appreciate it so much more when you're able to learn how resilient you are, like I did. I mean, I went through this 13 times and I kept feeling like, why me? Why is it just so hard for me? But there were so many things that I came out of this process learning about myself, about how bad, when I want something bad enough, how hard I'm willing to fight for it, and how far I'm willing to push myself, and how bad I just wanted to know and I just wanted to learn. So that's why I always say, whether you're taking FAR, audit, BEC, or reg, you have to focus on why you are doing this to begin with. Because if you're doing it for a promotion, if you're doing it for something that's outside of you, it's going to be difficult for you to pick up and keep going when you get that 69 or when you get that 74 or when you get that notification that you've lost credit for a section. So that mental fortitude. I tell students that all the time, that mental fortitude is key to being successful on the exam. And I can sit here and I can talk to you all day about statement of cash flows and leverage ratios and debt to equity and calculating other comprehensive income and an LLC versus a partnership versus a corporation, but none of that means nothing if you are not willing to put in the work, because I can't go into the testing center for you. Neither can anybody else. So we can talk about it, we can practice, we can motivate, we can go over formulas and definitions, but if you're not willing to put in the work, you're wasting everybody's time, including yours, including your own money. So when you study for FAR, which is basically the story of financial statements, the transactions that are posted to the accounts that make up the financial statements, the footnotes, the disclosures, the MD&A, the auditor's opinion, all of that into this financial report. What do they mean? How do they account for inventory? How do they record fixed assets? Why are they picking one method over the other? Does it make sense for the industry that they operate in? What are the competitors doing? Who has the competitive advantage? As an investor, do I want to give this company my money? Am I confident that they can generate a return? So, the best way to learn FAR, it's a lot of information. Some of it is complex and dry and makes no sense whatsoever. A lot of it requires practice, understanding calculations, understanding LIFO versus FIFO versus the retail method and the weighted average method, gains and losses and income taxes and DTAs and DTLs and times interest earned, margins and top line revenue and vendor discounts and sales discounts. It's a lot. So the best way to learn FAR is to find a publicly traded company that you like. Nike, Target, Wells Fargo. If you can, pick a company of something that you use. Apple, if you have an iPhone. Samsung, I think they make Androids if you have an Android. Nike, if you like Nikes. Target, if that's your idea of a great weekend, walking around Target, then what's your Starbucks? Starbucks, if you have to have your coffee every morning. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, if that's who you bank with. Find a company that's of interest to you. Publicly traded company. You can download their financial reports off of their investor relations page. So if you're looking for Target, you can just search for Target Investor Relations. It'll show you all of the filings that they have filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is all public information. Download that report. Print that report. That's what you use to study. If you really want to know how to calculate a statement of cash flows or how it should look, looking at an audit report, trying to understand the terminology and the order of the paragraphs, what the auditor is responsible for versus what management and the board is responsible for. This is all testable material. Find a company that you like, download, print their annual report. Even if it's a quarter end, download the annual report. That'll give you the most information. Use that to study. And one thing I learned as an accounting student at the Maxim Fisher College of Business at The Ohio State University is that accounting is just estimates. And the footnotes and the disclosures are what tell you what's really going on. So anytime I download a financial report, I start with the footnotes and the disclosures. Most people go straight to the statements, but those footnotes, disclosures, accounting policies tell you what is really going on and what you should expect to see in the financial statements. It's almost like, for me, the introduction to the actual statements. And those disclosures and those accounting policies tell you, for the most part, how companies are calculating things. They'll have a policy about fixed assets. We record assets at cost. We amortize on the straight line using straight line method. So then when you go and look at the balance sheet and you look at the assets and you say, okay, here's the line for the assets, and here's the accumulated depreciation, here's the net assets, and it helps you make sense of what's really happening. That's all the financial statements are. They're the story of a business. It's like an open book of the business. What are they doing? What are their operations? Who have they hired? How much does the C-suite make? What are their products and services? Who are their most important vendors? Who are the most important customers? It's the story of a business. And that's how you become an expert, by knowing and understanding the story of a business, because then you can use that information, the actual performance, to help your client, that business's management, make decisions about what they need to do next. If they need to expand certain teams, if they need to discontinue a product, increase the price of a product. It's not the mechanics. It's with artificial intelligence and all this stuff in the tech world, we can automate a lot of mechanics. It's hard to automate analysis. You still need human expertise to interpret the mechanics that a computer or a robot can do. So when people talk about accounting and say accountants are in jeopardy of losing their jobs to robots, no, that's not the case. Now, if you're somebody who just pushes buttons to debit one account and credit another, yeah, you can use a machine to do that. But when it comes to understanding why we're debiting and crediting those certain accounts, what this impact is to the company as a whole, and how you need to make adjustments if the results aren't as planned, you can't give that to a robot. So this is why it's important to learn new skill sets and keep your knowledge sharp. We all as CPAs have CPEs that we have to comply with each year. But understand your client's business. That's where the money comes in. That's how you become valuable. That's how you become an expert. So think about the CPA exam as not so much torturing you, but preparing you to be this superstar accountant that you really want to be. So grab the financial statements. Make sure you have the current FAR blueprint from the AICPA and jump into studying. Thank you again for tuning in and rocking with me on another episode of the WERKin Mommas podcast. This podcast is the business plan for entrepreneurs, the how-to and WTF guide for busy moms, and the coattail pulling career advice that professionals need to win in the corporate world. I'm Nikki Winston. I am a mama. I'm a CPA and a career development expert who put all the what ifs aside and launched my podcast. Do you love this content? If so, I would love for you to help create more of it. Support the WERKin Mommas podcast at buymeacoffee.com/Nick Winston CPA. When you go to the site, click on the support button, and from there you can buy as many cups of coffee or tea as you like. And feel free to leave a comment while you're there. Tell me what you like the most about the WERKin Mommas podcast. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/Nick Winston CPA and help create more of the content you love. If you're a CPA candidate, you can join the Winston CPA Exam Virtual Classroom online at winstoncpagroup.com/CPA Exam. Business owners, get answers to accounting and tax questions and how to form your LLC or corporation at winstoncpagroup.com/business. Are you a professional working in the corporate world? Well, there's career advice and tools that you need to elevate your leadership skills. Click on the career advice page of winstoncpagroup.com or go to winstoncpagroup.com/career advice. And of course, for the busy, overworked moms, there is a place where we understand your struggle. Join the WERKin Mommas community for cleaning hacks, quick meals that are nutritious and kid approved, and all things mom life at theworkinmommas.com. We also have a Pinterest board that's called Supercharged Self-Care that all the moms love. So check out our mom life tips over on Pinterest.com/theworkinmommas. And of course, if you are not already, you can follow me online on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter at Nick Winston CPA. Connect with the WERKin Mommas online at theworkinmommas.com, as well as on the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn pages. Thank you again. It has been fun, and my podcast is a labor of love for me. So I appreciate every single solitary person who is tuning in, and I look forward to you coming back to rock with me on another episode of the WERKin Mommas podcast.